Along your path, you will meet various people and you will encounter various situations, and you will also encounter celebrations, but also setbacks. And those setbacks and obstacles you face are not the sum total of your life. They're just mere moments of discomfort that bridge your past with your future. And I want everyone to know that teaching is not something you just do. It's a calling. And every interaction is really a learning experience that enhances your leadership lens. So surround yourself with people who act as mirrors, who are going to reflect your growth.
Fire, earth, wind, water. This is the Elemental Educator. And now your host, Tyler Como.
Alchemists, welcome to another episode of the Elemental Educator Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler, and thank you so much for joining our community for another incredible connection. If you're here for the first time, thank you, and welcome to a place where we redefine leadership and challenge the status quo. Take a minute before continuing the episode to subscribe to our YouTube at Elemental_Educator, where we upload all of our video episodes and additional leadership content meant for anyone looking to grow. For those returning alchemists, take some time to expand our community and share this platform with one other person today. I'm so thankful for your passion and dedication to being better together. Now get ready to let the alchemy of education ignite your passion for learning. Lauren Kaufman is currently serving as a district leader in Long Island, New York. With nearly 2 decades in education, she has served as an assistant principal, elementary instructional coach, an elementary and middle school reading specialist, new teacher mentor coordinator for K-12 schools, a creativity camp enrichment program supervisor, and a 2nd and 5th grade classroom teacher. Lauren is a lifelong learner whose professional passion is to empower teachers to stay and lead so they can share their gifts with others and develop lifelong literacy practices in all learners. She has led teams developing units of study in reading and writing, has provided educators with job-embedded professional learning that supported a comprehensive approach to literacy and guided new teachers with acclimating to culture and climate of a school system. She's organized various full-day literacy professional learning experiences and has presented at a local and national conferences, including ASCD, NCTE, FETC, LIASCD, Long Island Technology Summit, Reading Specialists Council of Suffolk, Long Island Language Arts Council, and more. Lauren is the author of the book, The Leader Inside, Stories of Mentorship to Inspire the Leader Within. Alongside her writing, she enjoys sharing her insights through blogging on her own platform. Additionally, Lauren has contributed to several publications, including George Kuros's Because of a Teacher, Lainey Rawls' Evolving with Gratitude, and IGI Global's Designing Effective Distance and Blended Learning Environments K-12. She has also contributed to Education Week and Edutopia and has served as a guest blogger for the Teach Better team, Future Ready Schools, and Defined. Lauren's passion lies in leading through a coaching mindset and sharing best literacy practices with colleagues. She wholeheartedly believes in the importance of developing powerful professional learning communities and networks that foster meaningful, relevant learning and growth. Welcome to the Elemental Educator Podcast. Lauren, it is my pleasure to have you here today.
Hi, Tyler. It is such a pleasure to be here. And thank you for that amazing introduction. You know, I was kind of going back in time. As you're saying all of that, I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it's been almost 2 decades in. But I'm loving it. And I appreciate you having me here with your audience.
Absolutely. And I do like the big introduction because it gives the audience the context of who it is that we are talking to on the other end and what they bring to the table and the value they bring. Everybody brings value, but to hear those experiences that we might not even get to touch on in this short 50-minute hour conversation, it's nice to share. And I want to start actually with sharing maybe a much bigger question, which is, Lauren, how did you get to where you are now?
Oh my goodness, that is a big question. Well, first of all, I've been so fortunate to have this beautiful career in education. This started when I was a little girl. My parents are educators. My grandfather was a college professor. My sister is now even in education. We have a whole bunch of educators in my family, and I've been lucky to be supported by so many great teachers along the way. But I really started almost 2 decades ago. I was a teaching assistant. I was a classroom teacher. It was then when I was a classroom teacher that I really discovered and honed my craft with teaching literacy and wanted to hone my craft even more and become a literacy specialist. The heart of a lot of the work I do is really in instructional coaching. I served in that role for a number of years, and it was really that role that got me outside of my classroom walls and got me to see the bigger picture by stepping into all of the classrooms and watching so many great practices that teachers were employing, and getting to cross-pollinate those ideas was quite amazing. It really shaped who I am and who I'm continuously striving to be. And I decided to take the formal leap into a leadership role. Although I think that if you're in education, you are a leader in education. I don't believe in titles. I believe that if we are working with kids, we are a leader in education. But I did go into a formal leadership role as an assistant principal. Now I'm a district leader. And I take a lot of my experiences from every role I just shared with you now, and I have applied it to this leadership role. I really love working alongside teachers, with teachers, to help elevate and lift practices so that we can really improve student outcomes together. We're in this work together. So that's in a nutshell. And here I am today. I love writing. I love sharing my learning. And that's why it's such an honor to be here with you today to talk about that even more.
I appreciate that. And what you said early on made me think of, I read a book when I first got into education called The Leader in Me. And it's an education-based book for those that haven't read it yet. And it talks about how every kid has the potential to be a leader. And it's applicable to everything outside of education as well, because it doesn't matter the role you're in. There are times where you lead, right? As a parent, you lead. As a friend, you lead. As a manager or a CEO or an executive, you lead. And you have a purpose when you take on a leadership role to be doing something for someone else, for the betterment of whatever it is you're trying to do collectively. And to hear your story, your passion behind it, puts us in good hands when we talk leadership. And so I'm thankful for that. And thank you for sharing your story. And it's very clear when you talk that you're rooted in something very deep, which is your values, which actually brings us up to our first segment of Grounded Moments. Rooted in wisdom, driven by purpose. Welcome to Grounded Moments. And to build some momentum here, I want to start with a little game. This is called Principles or Preferences. So Lauren, I'm going to hit you with a couple statements, and you just have to tell me if this is a core principle, it's something that you live by, no exceptions, or it's just personal preference, which is something you like but you don't expect from others. Make sense?
Yes.
All right. And these are quick, no time to think. We're just going to go with our gut here, okay?
Okay, you got it.
All right. Meetings should always start on time, no excuses.
Personal preference.
Leaders should always be the last to speak in a discussion.
Principle.
You should answer work emails outside of business hours if you see them.
Personal preference.
People should dress professionally, even in remote meetings.
Personal preference.
It's okay to say, I don't know. If you're not 10 minutes early, you're late.
Principle.
Small talk before meetings is essential for building relationships.
Principle.
You should never schedule a meeting when an email would work instead.
Principle.
Your workspace should always be neat and organized.
Preference.
And personal and professional life should always stay separate.
Preference.
All right. Thanks for playing the game.
Okay.
Fun little way to get started there.
Yeah, and there are some that was hard to say one or the other, because I think there's some overlap in those two. So the fact that you don't get to explain yourself a little bit, that's okay. I'll have to live with that. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? If we went into explanations, I'm sure many people would take the entire episode to go down their explanations for this. So it's all good. I think one of the ones that I'm a little different. Oh man, now I have to find out which one it was again. I might have to go back and rewatch and send you a message on which one I was a little bit different on, but we'll go from there. So anyway, in Grounded Moments, it is clearly all about what we value. And that's a fun little way not to get deep into our root values, but to just start talking about our preferences here. So the first question to come from this after the game is, what's one thing, Lauren, that's grounding you in what you're doing now?
People. You know, we're all human beings, and I love learning about the stories of people, because I think that our actions create a collection of stories that can positively impact others. I think the heartbeat of education really lives within the walls of schools. And within the walls of schools, you find kids and teachers in the mess of learning. And that's the heart of why we're here. This is what we do. And as education is constantly evolving, it is our responsibility to approach the way we lead, the way we learn with an open mindset, and ground ourselves in that idea that change is the constant, right? And you don't have to search for the big things to see the good things happen. It's in the small things that the magic happens. It's a collection of those small moments that add up to the big things. So every interaction helps me shape the leader and human being I am and the one that I'm becoming. And I really feel, Tyler, that I'm so grateful for the people along my path who have seen and recognized the gifts within me so that I can share those gifts and pay it forward. And I feel like it is my responsibility to understand and know that gifts live within exceptional educators, and they're just waiting to be unwrapped in the right place at the right time with the right people.
A value of relationships, right? A value of experience. That's what it's coming back to, which isn't surprising given the story, given the intro, given everything we just talked about up to this point. And before the show, I asked, I want something to talk about in grounded moments. And so I asked you to share a quote with us. And the quote that you shared was, "You can't tell where people will land from where they begin. With the right opportunity and motivation to learn, anyone can build the skills to achieve greater things. Potential is not a matter of where you start, but how far you travel. We need to focus less on starting points and more on the distance traveled." And this was from Adam Grant, Hidden Potential. Can you share with the audience how you found this quote and why you picked it for today?
Sure. I love Adam Grant's work. I started reading his book, Think Again, and then his recent book, Hidden Potential, had such a significant impact on me, including his podcast and all of the content he puts out. And the reason that quote resonated with me is that if you were to ask me what I'd be doing 5 years ago, and then 5 years before that, and then 5 years before that, if you look back at our lives in increments of time, I don't think 5 years ago, if you would have asked me what I would be doing now, that I would have been able to guess what I'm doing now. And 5 years before that, and you keep going back in time, right? So you never know where somebody will land based on where they start. I think you have to get into your career. You have to get into the mess of life. Nothing is linear in life. Everything kind of unfolds as it happens. And I think within those spaces is where you discover who you are as a person, what you believe in, what you value. So I think that there's this starting point, and the beautiful part of life is getting to meet people and have these experiences and letting life unfold a bit and shaping you into the person you're still becoming. And then I think it's exciting to think about too, the people who are going to be on your team that you haven't even met yet. There are so many people I've met, like you, Tyler. We've only met, maybe a couple of weeks ago, and now I have the opportunity to connect with you and your audience. And it's exciting to think about, the people you haven't met yet and what they're going to bring to you and others. So that's where that comes from.
Thank you for sharing. It reminds me so much of a conversation. Last week's episode is with Sam Dema, and Sam says everybody could have the same starting point, the same origin, but different philosophies, same circumstance, different philosophies. And those different philosophies will lead to different outcomes. And so it ties so well with what you're saying in the sense of that everybody can uniquely pick their own journey, even though it may feel like there's only so many streamlined processes to do things. It's a false claim. It's a myth, we'll say, that can be busted is there's so many unique paths to get things done, right? And, a great example of that is talk to anybody that's in the same career and talk to 10 people in the same career, and they're all going to have a different story of how they got there and what their career's like, right? And so it's so powerful to hear that when you have a value that's rooted in relationships and you have a value that's rooted in experience, that's what you're going to enjoy. You're going to enjoy the fact that everybody has that different route. You're going to enjoy and you're going to celebrate the fact that everybody took a different path to get to where they are. And you're also going to recognize there was no right path to get to where you were. And that's an important part too. So thank you for sharing and expanding upon that. Now, how does this quote and this message show up for you in your workflow, Lauren?
So one of the things I started thinking about in your response to me was that in the beginning of my career, and I don't think that this was a bad thing, I just think it's where you are at that point in time, is that, I would maybe have a perspective on various things, whether it's teaching and learning, whether it's developing relationships, how to acclimate to a community and a culture of an organization, right? We all have our perspective, and we bring that perspective based on what we know and what we believe in at that time. So I think that if I had kept that perspective almost 20 years ago, I wouldn't have evolved. I think what's important and what also helps me stay grounded in this work is that I love inviting other perspectives and listening to other ideas. And even if they're different than mine, I invite that because that's an opportunity to learn and grow and change your perspective a bit, even though you could still have the same core values at the heart of everything you do. And for me, that's keeping kids at the heart of decision making. That's why we're here, really. But I think that, going back to that quote that we can all have a starting point and end up somewhere else, I think it's okay and invited to bring people or give them a seat at the table to have that conversation, even if that looks a little bit different than what you had initially intended the conversation to be. Maybe you started in one place and you end up in another place, but through that open communication and collaboration and giving everybody that seat at the table, I think it opens doors to new ideas, new relationships, new collaborations, and that's where innovation is born. It's taking something that already exists and making it a little bit better.
That's exactly how it shows up in my workflow too. So I'm just sitting here taking it in and going, thank you so much for sharing. Lauren, this is the challenging part is I want to take this statement that you just gave me. And have you heard of an elevator pitch before?
I have, actually.
All right, so we have to shrink this to a 10 to 20 second pitch message to somebody about why this should be something that shows up for them in their workflow, why this should be something they should consider valuing. And I want you to share it with our audience in your pitch, again, why this is the most important thing to them. I will say, just in case there's nerves around the elevator pitch, I have had people be like, I want to redo it. And we're not live, right? So you have the ability to redo it. I can come back and switch it out. So let's go ahead and hear it.
All right. I'm going to take my best shot at the elevator pitch. But I think what I want everybody to know is that along your path, you will meet various people and you will encounter various situations, and you will also encounter celebrations, but also setbacks. And those setbacks and obstacles you face are not the sum total of your life. They're just mere moments of discomfort that bridge your past with your future. And I want everyone to know that teaching is not something you just do. It's a calling. And every interaction is really a learning experience that enhances your leadership lens. So surround yourself with people who act as mirrors, who are going to reflect your growth, but who are also going to push your thinking.
There we go. That was pretty solid. That was
I'm that
sold.
Good?
I thought you did great. I'll clip it and I'm going to make that the very start. I always try to hook people with an intro to the episode. That'll be my little intro hook. I like doing that with those.
Okay.
It's very solid. Now, Lauren, I put you through some adversity by putting you on the spot by playing a game, putting you on the spot by giving me an elevator pitch. We're going to move on to the adversity element, which is our air element. And our segment here is Headwinds and Tailwinds. Through storms and surges, discover the lessons from Headwinds and Tailwinds, where we focus on the challenge that tests us and the forces that help us move forward. And Lauren, you bet that if we played a game to start grounded moments, we're playing a game to start Headwinds and Tailwinds. And this one is called Make It Worse. So I'm going to give you a bad situation, and your job is to add some air element to it, some adversity. Just make it worse in one quick sentence. We'll keep it appropriate, but let's see how bad this adversity could really get. Are you ready to play?
I think so.
Okay. you're 5 minutes late for a job interview.
They tell you to leave because you're 5 minutes late.
See, this one's not rapid fire. I would have said something like, and you showed up with different shoes.
Okay. All right. Am I playing this wrong?
Yeah, no, you played it right. They tell you to leave.
Okay.
It's definitely adversity, right?
Okay.
All right. You text your boss instead of your friend, and the message says,
Can you believe what she said today?
oh, goodness. Okay. All right.
I don't know.
No, that's good. That's good.
It's cryptic. It's kind of cryptic.
It was good. I was sharing this one with my partner earlier, and I was like, what do you think of that question? And she's like, yeah, I think the one that I would hate to say is, I'm going to take a sick day today.
Oh my gosh.
But then that also kind of worked because that's who you would message to say you're taking a sick day. But then it expanded into I'm going to fake a sick day, and we got down a rabbit hole.
Okay.
All right. And then the last one we'll do for this one is you wave at someone, but they weren't waving at you.
You realize that it's somebody you had a conflict with and you thought they were waving at you to make up with you, but they weren't. I don't know.
I feel like we just created some like new anxiety nightmares here. That was great.
Good at this game.
Yeah. Most people have the optimistic lens on things that are, these little things will just go, whatever. But this is a fun little one that I'm trying out and we'll see how it goes. I think I might keep it because it's getting you to laugh at least. So I'll keep it. But let's keep moving forward before this gets worse for us.
Okay.
And let's set the stage here, Lauren. Can you now share a time when you faced significant adversity that wasn't texting a boss or showing up late or waving at an inappropriate time, I guess. But what was happening and how did it feel in that?
Yeah. So I think life brings us disruptors all the time and it can throw us off our course, right? And without getting too specific, because there are times, especially, in leadership where you do face a lot of adversity and you're trying to identify solutions to potential obstacles, or you're trying to identify potential obstacles before they become, a conflict or an issue. But I think what I will say is the common thread that is woven throughout all of the adversity or obstacles that I've ever faced, and it's something that's really hard to overcome for me that I've had to work really hard on, is that feeling of disappointment, because that manifests itself differently in different contexts. So what is disappointment? They're really unmet expectations. So whether you went for a job interview and you went all the way through the process and you made it to the end and you didn't get that job, right? Or maybe it's that there's something going on at work and you have to have a crucial or difficult conversation with a colleague or an educator, but you're keeping kids at the heart of the conversation. So that's what helps me keep going in that conversation. And perhaps it's the way somebody else responds. Perhaps it's others who are judging you, perhaps without even knowing you. And maybe they're creating a narrative about who you are and what you believe in. That's not really true. And that happens a lot, especially in the culture we have with social media. And, we live in what my kids would call like the cancel culture, so I think all of those adversities that we could face, I think that feeling of disappointment, because I like to believe in the goodness of people. I always start in that place. People at their core are good. They have good intentions. They are doing this for the greater good of the community, for the organization. They're sharing ideas because they want to do what's best for kids. They want to do what's best for adults. But sometimes, this is hard work. Being in education, it's the most rewarding job on the planet, but it could be emotionally draining sometimes, and it could take its toll. And why does that happen to us in education? Because we're very reflective people and we care. We care so much. And at the end, we're all human beings, right? So I think for me, that feeling of disappointment in the goodness of people, like when you want to believe people are good and then, something happens that feels disruptive, and you have to change your course a little bit or maybe put a shield on you, to protect yourself so you can protect others as a leader. I think that's something that I've had to tackle over the course of time.
And the best way to turn conflict to collaboration is to find your realignment, right? To communicate a little bit better, right? And so we talk about, where does conflict root from? It comes from expectations not being met. And so why are expectations not met? It's usually because the message was unclear or lost in translation, right? And it comes down to, I didn't know that this is the route we wanted to go, or I didn't know that this is what was expected of me, right? And when those two things happen, that's where most conflicts arise. People get edgy, people get testy with each other, and that's where things can just build and build and build. And until those two people actually communicate and unpack what it is that they even disagreed with in the first place, that tension is just going to keep building. That conflict's going to get bigger. And that's how you lead to organizations that have people that lead them, or have people within them where people look at them and go, oh, I hate that person.
Yeah.
Right? When really all they need to do is have a conversation in the same room together, not around each other. There's a lot of importance around that as well.
Yeah, very, very often I start those conversations I was talking about before, crucial conversations with, we're having this conversation today because I care about you very much. And I know that you can rise to this expectation. So I think believing, again, in the abilities of people, that's what brings us back to the important work.
Yeah. And my approach is different, but I like that approach too. And that's a great way to start it, is you start with empathy and you make them feel valued. I always start with, and this will be a specific setting for people in education, right? We are here to do the best we possibly can for those kids that come into our building. And I feel like what you and I need to align and collaborate to be able to do that. And we're not there right now. So this conversation is about getting there. Right. And when you start with what your goal is, right, people will buy in, right? You start to establish ownership. Because if I have a conflict with somebody, there's probably a 50% chance, if I go to them and say, we're having this because I care about you, that they don't believe me. But if I start with, we're having this because, and I relate it back to what our job is and our alignment and our goal, that's what they're there for. Right. Most people that are in education, and I shouldn't say it turns to 100%, but 90% of people in education are there for the kids. They're there to do better for the kids. And so starting by that, hey, we're here to have a conversation because we need to be better for kids. They'll instantly go, yeah, you're right.
Sure. And I think that you get to that place. I think it looks different whether it's your first year in a role and you're first meeting people or connecting with people. Like that difficult conversation looks different in that first year versus your second and third year, as people get to know who you are and what you believe in. Because if people know who you are and what you're about, that you're there for the betterment of kids, and that they know that that's the heart of everything you do, getting right to it sometimes is the best way to go, because it takes away that anxiety of that conversation. It's just getting right to what it is you're there to talk about today, but then also telling them that you know that they can rise to the occasion and that you could do this together. You're here to collaborate on this effort. And I think, people want to feel seen. They want to feel valued. Everybody makes mistakes, right? Everybody, has a moment in time that might not be their best moment. And then when that moment starts becoming a collection of moments and you're starting to see a pattern, that's when that conversation has to happen. So I think you have to be aware of that too in leadership, is that, is this, when you're having that interaction, was this a one-off? Was it a one-time thing? Or is it something that needs a little attention now because this person can do better and you believe that they can?
And it comes back to what we talked about earlier, that there's no streamlined path that every single person takes, and everybody you're going to have different conversations with, because everyone's unique and will respond different ways and have our own experiences. With that, Lauren, for people facing their own headwinds, what's one thing they can do to keep moving forward past adversity?
I think believing in yourself, believing in who you are, what you value, and thinking about your goals and how it is you're going to get there. I think having a destination and knowing that there are going to be different paths to get you to that destination, and that, again, it's not linear, that there will be those disruptions along the way, that keeps you going. So I think going into something when you have goals and you want to achieve great things for your organizations, to know that this is not going to be a perfect experience. There's going to be a lot of imperfection, some failure, where you're going to have some perseverance and setbacks to move forward again. And I think when you go into it that way and just having that idea that knowing that this might take a turn when I learn something else and my idea is going to evolve, to be open to that and to be open to the wisdom of others as you move along that path, and not taking a different perspective from someone else as criticism, but an opportunity, use it as an opportunity to help you grow as you row towards that destination.
And I love this. This is a theme emerging from my last few episodes I've recorded. Bet on yourself. Do it. Just bet on yourself. Because at the end of the day, you're the one that needs to go home with yourself and be happy. You're the one that needs to go home with yourself and feel like you made the right decision. It's not the people that are telling you what to do. Bet on yourself to take control. Bet on yourself to feel good. Bet on yourself to build confidence. And you're going to fail when you bet on yourself. And that's when you bet on yourself again. You double down. Because when you continue to bet on yourself, you continue to find ways to believe in yourself and push your limits and grow yourself, rather than letting people tell you how to control your life instead. So we talked about all these changes, and that brings us up to our water element, which handles change altogether, which is ripples of change. Small shifts, big waves. This is Ripples of Change, where we dive into the power of embracing change and making waves that last. And now, Lauren, I know that we're 33 minutes into this episode and you've been saying, let's play another game. So we are going to play another game here. And this one is called Here's the Trick. So I'm going to give you a situation that people always have advice for, and you have to drop one piece of advice that has actually worked for you or somebody you know. So it can be serious, unexpected. You can totally unhinge this one if you want to. Let's try to get no generic answer. That might be the cliche answer to it. Although if you are going to give one, just say, hey, this is the cliche answer, but we'll go with it.
Okay.
This doesn't need to be rapid fire, so you can take some time to think. I'm just going to pick a couple here. So let's give you a scenario, and let's start with the key to making a great first impression is
getting to know somebody else, asking them questions about themselves. I think people, they like to know that you're interested in who they are. And I think when you learn about who somebody is, then it sets you up to have a more productive and proactive conversation with that person.
Yeah, I agree. I love hearing people's stories. You make them feel valued. Something simple for me, quick tip for everybody, smile when you meet someone for the first time, right? It releases endorphins in people's brains. Look at their eyes, right? Little things like that. Okay, the quickest way to recover from an embarrassing moment.
I think sometimes it's just to own it and just say, wow, that was really embarrassing. I don't know, it made me feel this way, but how did it make you feel? Just to make a little joke from it. And I know that might sound a little cliche, but sometimes you just have to kind of like own the way you feel. I'm the person who, when I have an emotion, like I wear it all over my face sometimes, especially when it's that feeling of embarrassment. So I think it's okay to say to somebody, wow, that was really embarrassing. You know?
Yeah, no, you got to run. You got to move and relocate and try again once you've had something embarrassing. I'm just kidding, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a face turn red person. And so when I embarrass myself, people always know. But usually we just laugh about it. We move on. We say, hey, we could be adults about this. That was funny. And then it gets brought up for the next 30 years of your life.
Exactly. We could talk about it. It makes another good story. It makes us human, right? To be
fantastic.
Embarrassed.
All right, one more here, Lauren. The one thing people should do differently when networking.
I think when you enter a really crowded room, it could be overwhelming. And one of the things that I've done, instead of thinking, let me get to as many people as possible, I kind of look around the room and I say, okay, I'm going to connect with maybe 2 or 3 people, but in a really purposeful way, instead of connecting with all of these people or just going over there, going over here, saying a quick hello. You know, I only have a certain time frame, so I really want to make the most of my time. So I think that would be my tip is, you know, more depth with fewer people than getting around to all the people and having it be very surface level. Because if you have a deeper connection with fewer people, that leads to other connections anyway in the future.
Somebody that I work with says it best, actually, and I love it. And I need to steal it more. And it's who do you know that I need to know? And they actually go beyond people that are just around them in a networking situation. And they start to say, hey, you know a bit about who I am. Who do you think I should know as well that might not be here? Right. And it's a nice way to say, who do you know that I need to know? It makes them feel important, makes them feel valued. They share that.
Yeah.
Thanks for playing. Let's get into, that was a bit more of a tamed segment. Let's get more into a ripples of change conversation here. So what's a recent change, Lauren, that you have embraced or led?
So I think there are so many things in education, so much work that we're leading right now as this landscape changes when it comes to technology and literacy and learning and getting kids ready for jobs that don't even exist right now, So I think staying on the cutting edge of best practice. And when I say best practice, it doesn't have to be like this new crazy thing, right? It could just be taking what exists and how can we level up this experience so that kids can have all of these pathways to learn, and getting teachers to see that we need to provide those pathways for kids. I think I'm going to share, for me, what's really helped me become a better leader is writing every week and reflecting on my learning. If you actually go back to my blog, which is really a space for me to reflect on my learning, but has inadvertently impacted other people, because what's nice is that it's a space that's connected me to other people over the course of the last 5 years since I've been writing, and what helped me actually write my book, which I didn't even think was going to happen. My blogs really became this, I kind of pieced them together, and that's what became the leader inside. So I think that through my reflection and my growth as a leader, as an educator, as a human being, the writing element of me, of things that I'm experiencing weekly in my role. And it usually looks like this. It's like, here are some books I've read. Here are some podcasts I've listened to. Here's what happened to me this week. And here's an experience that I've had. Here's how I set up this professional learning series. This is how I set up this interaction with a group of new teachers that I'm mentoring. And here are some practical, actionable ideas you can implement tomorrow. It's not just impacting my organization, but it's impacting the greater educational community, because I'm putting myself out there. That took me a long time to kind of get comfortable with, that feeling of discomfort. But we live in, growth and comfort do not coexist, right? So when we put ourselves out there, similar to what you do, Tyler, you put content out there, you're talking with educators, you're putting yourself in that vulnerable position so that others around you can grow and bring perspective or bring ideas. And it's really connected me not only more to the people within my own organization, because they might say like, wow, that was a really cool experience, Lauren, and I loved reading. Sometimes people are reading my work without me knowing it, but they'll bring it up to me and they'll say, thank you. That really, really helped me. You sharing that feeling of vulnerability or that feeling you were having helped me grow. It helped me take a risk in my classroom that day. Or to have people from the outside who I've really met all over the world and globally really say like, Lauren, I've used this piece that you wrote in a professional learning session. So I think putting myself out there and taking the risk and getting past that idea of what do I have to share that no one has seen before, because what's obvious to you isn't always obvious to others. And I think George Couros helped me see that when he challenged me to blog, 5 or 6 years ago, in front of a group of new educators I was mentoring. I used to run a mentor program, and he said, Lauren, I'm challenging you to blog. You need to blog. And I said, well, what do I have to share? No one has seen before. And then I started doing that. And it was a monthly habit that became bi-weekly, and now it's a weekly habit. So I think that has made a significant impact on me. And it's not something new that I have specifically, but if you go back into the work, I'm pretty vulnerable in that space. And from what others say to me, it feels generous to them that I'd be willing to share that.
Now, I do link everything in the description, but for people listening, what's the best way for them to find this blog, Lauren?
Sure. If you just go to www.laurenmkaufman, You could see all of my blogging there, all of my work, any, speaking I've done, everything is right there. And I'm always willing to connect with educators and talk about anything you're thinking about in the education space. I know time is really a factor sometimes, especially because we all lead such busy lives and busy looks different to everybody. I actually don't like saying, oh, I'm busy to anybody, because we're all busy, right? We just fill our time in all different ways. But that's the space you can connect with me. My email is there. My socials are there.
Now, either blog related or a different event related, but change can either create positive momentum or an unexpected setback. What's a ripple effect that you didn't see coming?
I think the small things like gratitude that we show to people, because that's something that I do in my practice regularly. So it's not like this big moment, right? It's not like this big moment in time, but it could be that I will receive a text message from a teacher that I mentored maybe 10 or 15 years ago saying, Lauren, remember when you shared this little management tip in my classroom? That's really helped me. Or thank you so much for your generous words. You gave me the courage to try something new. Or even a couple of weeks ago, I was standing in the bagel store and I ran into a former student. I was wearing Jordan sneakers and he's like, hey, Mrs. Kaufman, I love your Jordans. And I said, oh, hey, Ben. And he said, oh my gosh, I didn't know you would remember my name. I said, of course I remember your name. I said, how are you doing? What are you up to? And he says, Mrs. Kaufman, he said, I'm a junior in high school now. I had him when he was in middle school. And he said, and I just want you to know that I like to read now because of you. And I know you didn't see it then because I gave you a really hard time when I was in your class, which he did. He did.
That's why you remember him.
Yeah, maybe for that and for some other reasons, but very endearing kid always. And that, you never know when your past will meet your future again. And getting to have that interaction with him, he was actually in my last class before I stepped into a formal leadership role. So if I hadn't had that opportunity in that moment to connect with him in the bagel store, I wouldn't have known that this kid all of a sudden became a reader, and he loves reading, and he started telling me about all the genres he was reading and why he fell in love with reading and how it started in my class. So, sometimes we don't hear about the impact we're making right away, but someone's thinking about us somewhere along the line. I think education is one of those careers that we don't always see it. We don't always see it in that moment, but what person doesn't remember an educator that was in their lives, on their path, that served as that lantern, guiding them along the way? And people don't always say it, but they're thinking it. And sometimes there are those moments like I had with Ben where you'll get that feedback and it'll make you feel good. It'll say, okay, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm in education. That's the legacy that we're leaving behind that sometimes we can't see in the moment.
And you're so true on impact is unknown, and it's unknown until we're gone, right? We don't know the power of what we were able to bring to this world until we've left it. And even then, who knows how that gets analyzed and assessed. And the people that we fight with the most, or the people that present themselves as the most challenging or the most difficult, that's where change is happening the most, because change is uncomfortable. Change is not supposed to be easy. And so bringing it back to impact and implementing change, it's an uncomfortable process for a lot of people. And those people that you look back on and you go, wow, those were some difficult times. That's where change happened the most. And you've come out different people because of it. It's really powerful to share. Now, Lauren, people often worry that change won't last. So what's one thing that you do in your work to make sure that change becomes a part of culture rather than just a trend?
Really good question. I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, knowing your core values, who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it. So I think whenever I'm working with teachers, whether they're new teachers, veteran teachers, everything in between, and even my colleagues, fellow leaders, we have to ground ourselves in our why. And then we have to think about that that experience or that moment or that idea is going to have down the line. I think that it's okay to also abandon something when it's not going well. And I think it's okay to have an idea and say, this sounds like a great idea, and you embark on that idea and maybe you pivot a little bit because other things happen. So I think the way to make change and impact last is anchoring the work in those values, knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it. I always say learning shouldn't be a secret. Learning is also really messy, right? So I think it's good. How do we know that it still will exist down the line? Is that you have sprinkled your gifts, right, into those spaces and those ideas and that collaboration and communication. It continues even when you're not there in the room. That's when you know you've made an impact, is that you have started something. You're not necessarily staying there in the room, but when you leave that space, the momentum is there, right? So that energy, that momentum, that spirit that you have brought to it, when everybody understands their purpose for it, then that legacy and impact continues.
Absolutely. And we'll make sure we sprinkle it everywhere. I love it. Now, this is the energy of this segment is we're getting into the heart of decision making, which is our fire element, the risks we take, the bold moves. And that's going to bring up our last segment here for elements, which is spark or burn. Ignite your ideas, face the flames. This is Spark or Burn, where we talk about bold decisions, big risks, and the fires that either spark success or burn lessons into our memory. Lauren, I'm going to circle back to a game that we played in Grounded Moments. It's not the same rapid fire style, but you do not get to explain your answer here. And so that makes it increasingly more difficult and riskier in our bold decisions here. We're going to play final answer. So I'm going to give you a high stakes decision. And you have to lock in your answer immediately, which is everything that we go against. I already know that. No explanations, no take backs. We're just going to commit to something. Are you ready?
I think so. Okay.
All right. And we'll keep it. We'll keep it okay. We're going to start with you have to delete one social media platform forever.
Facebook.
Facebook. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. You can only eat one meal for the rest of your life.
A burrito.
Oh, okay. There's so similar paths there. Burrito. I was going with taco. I was thinking about it. I was like, because you got to give up everything else. Oh man, that's a hard one.
Well, you're not letting me explain the why. I think I have a good reason for it, but that's okay.
The rule said not to explain it. I gotta hear it. You have burrito. Oh, okay. I think I know where this is going, but I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna let you take it. Go for it. Why are we eating a burrito?
Well, you could fill a burrito with anything. You can have a breakfast burrito, lunch burrito, a dinner burrito, different fillings in the burrito.
Yep.
Makes it exciting.
Why not just do salad?
Because you need some carbs sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Salad gets boring after a while to me. And you could have lettuce inside the burrito and tomatoes and vegetables,
Yep. All right. Last one here is you're only allowed to use one emoji for the rest of your life. Whenever you send a message or anything, what emoji is it that you are going to use?
The heart, the purple heart.
The purple one specifically.
Yeah.
Okay. Mine, I think, was the fire emoji, but that's just because I'm Elemental Educator and weird like that. Anyway.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Lauren, can you tell us about a time when you made a bold leadership decision or took a major risk? What was the spark behind it?
Oh, man. Let me pick one. I think that I will go with, it was a decision it was a curriculum decision, right? When teachers are used to, and I say this because we think about things that we've always done in the past, right? And we're comfortable. It goes back to that feeling of comfort versus discomfort. And we say, well, we've always done it this way. And sometimes we have to shift a practice because we know that it's better for kids. And I think it's really hard for adults to unlearn things sometimes because we're feeling comfortable. We feel like it's worked before. So having to bring a high impact practice that's difficult to employ to adult learners is a bold move. sometimes, because you're having to explain to people that, yes, we've been doing it this way and it doesn't make it less important or not valuable, but we're doing it this way now because this is going to have more of an impact on kids and their learning and their growth long term.
Did you have to adjust your strategy along the way?
Yes. I think that with different personalities, when you're trying to embark on instructional shifts that are going to have a big impact, and you're working with a lot of different personalities and a lot of different people, the information is not always going to land the same on everybody. It's going to land a little bit different. So sometimes you need to approach that conversation a little bit differently, or explain it a little bit differently, or show model examples. Or I have found the most impact has been that if I am asking educators to do something or make a shift in their practice, then I am rolling up my sleeves and I am going into classrooms and I am doing it myself to show them. Because I'm a big believer in, you don't ask people or educators or adults to do things that you wouldn't try yourself. And that way you have that experience that you can bring to the table. So right now, if it's modeling a high impact literacy practice that's going to have strong outcomes for readers later on, I'm getting in there with the teachers and I'm modeling it, or I'm teaching with them so that we can talk about the experience. We could talk about how the students reacted, and then I can bring that back to other educators. So that's like one example of how I have shifted from saying this is the theory, this is the research, this is the what and the why we're doing this, and this is how it can look, to this is how it looked when we tried it. This is how it looked in this classroom. This is how it looked in another classroom. This is how one teacher responded. This is how another teacher responded. So when you have something tangible that you can share with teachers, I think that it leverages what you're trying to embark on or change. And it gives you a little more street cred in that space.
Absolutely. And bold decisions can be intimidating. So Lauren, what's one action you would give our audience or dare them to do this week to help just build their ability to make bold decisions and take risks?
Step into the mess of learning. Go into classrooms and be with the teachers. See what the celebrations are. Acknowledge them, because people need to be celebrated and should be celebrated, because this is the most important work we'll do, is seeing kids learn, seeing kids grow, seeing teachers step out of their comfort zones, and being there to coach and give in the moment feedback. That is something that I live through a coaching mindset. I take my instructional coaching roots and I try to be the leader that I've always needed. So what has really helped move my practice? I was 15 years as an educator before I became a formal leader. It's when somebody came in to give me very specific, actionable feedback that I can employ with my students right away. Practical, reasonable things, a resource I could have in my hand to employ with students tomorrow. So I would say to take action, be with teachers. As my friend George Kuros, I'll bring him up again, he would say you learn for people, about people, with people. Learn alongside of them. Because if we're just telling people what to do and not getting in there with them, I just think that it doesn't have the impact that you're going to hope to see for kids.
Absolutely. And George is so well spoken too. And he's somebody that I've been working with to get on the show too. And we just have to align our times and we'll get there. Very powerful message. Yeah.
He's a busy guy.
Very, very busy guy.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to move on to listener questions here, Lauren, which I don't have a segment tune to play for yet. I'm letting people down by not having one, I feel. But anyway, the idea of this is I put out on my social media, hey, we have some interviews coming up. What do people have for questions? And we try our best to give them an answer that we maybe don't think they're looking for. It's just our honest answer to the question. I was just pulling them up on my screen here. We'll tackle one today, okay? And the question that I have for us today, and maybe speak to your time as a principal here before you got to the position you're in currently, or maybe you want to speak to the position you're in currently about this. It doesn't matter. They just want to know, what does your staff meetings look like? What does your professional development look like?
So always, some of the framework that I use is I want to set up a day where people could have practices they can implement tomorrow. So every little thing that I do in a professional learning session is modeling what I would want teachers to do. So when people enter the room, I'm always playing music. Why am I playing music? Because it increases the energy. It gets people talking. When you're entering a quiet room, the energy is different. You want people to feel ready to learn today. That music sparks some neurons in the brain. It gets people going. So I used to do that for my students when they entered the classroom, especially when I taught middle school. First period was difficult for my 8th graders. They were still sleeping. But when I changed to music, and it was their favorite music, they started coming in and dancing in the morning, and then they were more available to learn. So I have found that. I have found that always using the framework, like I said before, this is what we're doing today and why we're doing it. Just putting it out there to everybody. Everybody's time is so valuable. They want to know, why are they there learning with you today? Having some hands-on of learning is important. Giving teachers a chance to talk to each other, especially around student work. I always love teachers to bring student work with them, because I find that when we highlight student work, we get to see in all different student learning. It really sparks some great conversation. And having that assessment criteria right there is, what do the kids need to do to be successful in this learning experience? Helps us create new goals for those students. So I think bringing student work is really important. And multimedia pathways, having teachers be able to see visuals through video, right? Not just student work, but also having some type of experience where they get to create in that learning session so that they could take back that resource to implement tomorrow is really, really important for the work. And then implementation follow through, getting some feedback from the teachers on how your session went, and then talking to them about what they've been able to implement, and then planning for next time. You're using that feedback to incorporate into your next cycle of learning.
The best staff meeting is no staff meeting. And I try to set it up so that I never have staff meetings, but we have collaborative sessions. Mm-hmm. And if I can put something in an email, or it can be done in writing, or it can be done through a quick message, then I do that. Right. And 90% of organizations, their staff meetings are irrelevant because they could have been done through an email or some other type of correspondence where you didn't need to take everybody's time to gather, sit down, and then have a conversation that's one dimensional. You do have to build a background to that, right? So anytime I am sending out communication through an email or through a message that doesn't need to be included in a staff meeting, my staff have 24 hours to respond and say, hey, I've read this, I understand it. And that's all I ask them to do, is to say, hey, I understood it. And I use my staff meeting time, I like to call it collaboration time, to have my team work together to actually solve something that it's essential that we have all of us in the room to take on, right? And so maybe we're crafting a lesson plan for a land-based program in education that we're putting together that requires 4 different curriculums to come through at once. And this is time for us to work through this. Maybe we have to unpack the role that everybody's going to be taking in an upcoming Christmas concert, right? Maybe we are going to be planning what our year-end activities look like, and we all have to talk about dates, times, and get organized in that matter. And to do this effectively, we need to come together and have a conversation. But there's certain things, typical staff meetings, I'm trying to think where this question's coming from. And information updates can be emails, right? Mm-hmm. If people are required to read an admin procedure, it can be done through an email where they read and understand, but you have to be careful on that, because sometimes you'll be told, no, this is when you have to read to everybody, so they've heard it as well. So just be mindful of the request when you're going through an admin procedure from that standpoint. Your job, if you're in a role as a leader, is to listen to the people around you as well. And so there's nothing wrong with that time also being dedicated to hear some things that we have coming up in the future that I have to make decisions on. I want to create a space where you guys can help share some input on those decisions. What do you value? What do you see happening? Where does it go? And I'm going to take them all in and make a decision from that, but I want your voice to be heard in making those. And so trying to create spaces where you're just honest and transparent with people. But in terms of professional development, it depends on so many things. It depends on your school's mission and vision. It depends on your divisions for your education plan. It depends on so many factors that it looks different for everyone. But some staple points, like similar to Lauren, like how you play music to start when people come in to create that inviting, welcoming, upbeat space. I like to start things off with games. And so, I've started meetings before, or professional development, by playing a Family Feud, where we're going through rapid fire education based questions, right? Or connect the dots, or name that tune, just something very simple to get people's brains going. We do that with kids. We should do that with adults, right? Mm-hmm. My professional development usually comes down to creating spaces where people can focus on what they feel they need to focus on. And then my job is to support them while they do that. So if I have to bring somebody in to talk with them about it and work through that, I'm looking into that. If I have to create time where them and another teacher can sit down and work on something together, I'm going to create that. If we're trying to create better literacy programs, I'm going to sit my literacy teachers down and we're going to work on that. If I'm trying to create numeracy programs, we're going to sit our numeracy teachers down and we're going to let them work on that. If we're trying to, again, whatever space we're trying to create, you're trying to just create time for that space. Because that's the one thing that people value the most in education. And if you go and you ask any educator, what is it that you wish you had? A lot of them are going to say more time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And when I was an assistant principal, my principal and I think some of the best time well spent was when we took all the kids for mass preps for the teachers and gave them extra time to work together, and, without setting too many parameters, because we had so many district priorities and building goals to move forward, but say, hey, you're going to have this time. You could work on this, this, or this, give them a choice. That was really appreciated and really valued. And having food doesn't hurt too. Some candy and chips. That's always something really important. But also, you were making me think, like, some of my best department meetings or staff meetings were those where teachers got to just come in and we got to shine a light on their best practices. So remember when you were just talking about like the 30-second elevator speech, give like a 1-minute rundown of a practice that you implemented in your class and why it was successful. I can't tell you how many teachers appreciated that, because you could say a lot in 1 minute. You could bring a little artifact. Sometimes you have the teachers bring an artifact. This was the process, this was the product, this was awesome, and this is why. I think teachers found a lot of value in that too, is just being able to be in a space to cross-pollinate ideas. That
Absolutely.
was really good too.
Lauren, it's been a pleasure connecting with you. And how can our audience connect with you after the show?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, you can do it through my website, laurenmkaufman.com. And my handle for social media, all platforms, is at Lauren M. Kaufman.
Thank you so much. And alchemists, as we wrap up our episode today, I just want to take a moment and say thank you for listening to the show. Lauren has been an incredible conversation. We tried some new things out in the show. We rattled her off with some difficult games that we got to play and make some tough decisions that sparked some good laughs for us. At least I hope you were able to get something from our show. And remember that the show is here for you. So if you continue to have listener questions as you listen to the show, send them my way, Tyler at Elemental Educator. I check all my emails. I try to respond to all of them, and I'll take the clips of the answers that you give us and I'll send them back to you personally so that you get the feedback right from us to know, hey, we took on your question today and we tried to address it. But again, from the bottom of my heart, this show exists because you're here to listen. So thank you so much. And Lauren, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to connect, collaborate, and empower us all through your lived experiences.
Thank you so much for having me, Tyler. And thank you to all the educators out there for all that you do. We need you, and we're so happy you're here.
You've been listening to The Elemental Educator. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Elemental Educator.